Nobody will hear me.
Redo.
Good evening. The San Dimas City Council meeting for June 25th will come to order. Please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. City Attorney, do we have any kind of report from the closed session?
Mayor, the City Council met in closed session tonight to discuss the two labor negotiation items on the closed session agenda. Council discussed those items and gave direction to staff, but there's no reportable action taken.
Thank you, sir. Tonight we have a presentation on the Gold Line Bridge art. Mr. Keith Batchelor. Scott Wasserman, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Vidar. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Scott Wasserman, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'd like to introduce Keith Batchelor is the artist that we selected through our process to develop the artwork and the murals for the Gold Line Bridge on Bonita Avenue. And you'll notice that in your consent calendar, one of the items pertains to approving these designs tonight. So obviously, I'm going to turn it over to Keith here, and Keith's going to walk you through the designs and see if you have any questions. I think you'll really like them, though.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Like I said, my name is Keith Batchelor. I'm a 38-year resident of San Dimas, and I was very happy to be involved with this project. I'm a former illustrator, did that for over 30 years, and I've been a fine artist for the last 15. I used to exhibit my work in the Western show that was here. Anyway, I wanted to show you the 4 murals. This is the first one. I wanted to honor the Native American people who lived in San Dimas for thousands of years. They were called the Quiche. It's pronounced K-I-Z-H. And I was assisted on this mural by Dr. Gary Sickle. I don't know if he's here. Probably not. But he really helped me with this project here. So at the top is woman named Toi Perina. She was one of the leaders of the Quiche people, and she led a revolt against the Spanish, who really took over her people and made them slaves to build the San Gabriel mission. And so she was very important in their history. If you notice, I put Mount Baldy towards the top there. That's the one feature of our landscape that's it's been there forever, so I wanted to feature that in every mural. And then below that is a typical Quiche village. They lived in thatched huts, and they were hunter-gatherers. They ground up seeds and corns and things to make their food. And at the bottom is a collection of Quiche baskets. They were very talented in that regard, and a mortar where they would ground up their corns and seeds. I also designed a border design for all 4 of the murals. So there's a continuity there for each mural. The second mural is the early town of San Dimas in the 1890s. Again, Mount Baldy at the top. Below that is the edifice of the existing train station. And then below that is the very first train station when the Santa Fe Railroad came in to San Dimas and really helped put the city on the map. At the same time, they built a train hotel they thought would be helpful with they thought was going to be a big land boom, but that never happened. So they sold the building to a private family who lived there for many years, and now it's called the Walker House. You see a little bit of the Main Street back there. And in the bottom is the very first car that came into San Dimas, 1903 Oldsmobile. The third, the third mural, I really wanted to honor the citrus industry that was so big here in San Dimas. Over 60 years, San Dimas shipped oranges and lemons all over the United States and abroad. It was a big industry. So I wanted to show the orange and lemon groves, Mount Baldy in the background. And then I had a group of the pickers there with their bags to pick all the oranges and lemons. There's crates of them in the foreground there. And at the bottom, the pet company was the huge company we had here for oranges and lemons. So I wanted to put two of their crate labels at the bottom. The last mural is going to shows the downtown San Dimas, how it looks today. And again, Mount Baldy at the top. I have the foothills below that with the San Dimas water tanks up there. And then as you go down the new clock tower on Bonita Avenue is featured. On the left is some of the old buildings. On the right is the Walker House, how it looks today. And below that is the water trough over by the train station. So again, the finished art was all done digitally. On my Cintiq Wacom tablet, I painted them that way. So the finished files are going to be sent to a tile company in Florida, and they're going to fabricate tiles of the art, and the tiles will be roughly a foot square. So they told me that the tiles will last for hundreds of years, and so it was a good way to do it. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
What do you think about how these tiles are going to last 100 years? How long do you think they're going to last with our graffiti artist?
Well, the bottom of the mural is almost 8 feet off the ground, so you have to be fairly tall, I guess. But if they were tagged, it's going to have a glass coating on the tiles, so I think it'll be pretty easily wiped off, or just with a thinner, they could take it off.
That won't affect the thinner won't affect the tile itself?
No.
Is it?
If I had done these as a painting on there, they would have started cracking and peeling before too long, and this was the best way to do it in the tile format, and they'll last a very long time.
Thank you for your expertise, and thank you for doing this for us.
It was quite an honor. I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a little added pleasure and plus having a San Dimas citizen do this for us.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've lived here 38 years, and I love this city, and it was quite an honor to do it. So, thanks.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to say thank you as well. I know Councilmember Weber and I were on some calls with Mr. Wasserman talking about what we hoped on the as the ad hoc committee for this. And, you know, our hope was to see, you know, something that paid homage to the past and then to the present. I think we talked about the future. It is missing the flying cars we talked about and the drones, but nevertheless, it's outstanding work, and thank you so much. It means a lot, and I think it's going to be really a great addition to this community.
I think we'll have a good-looking bridge for sure.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I did want to just say something really quick. As someone who grew up in San Dimas, I'd never heard of the Quiche tribe. And so I'm learning something now about San Dimas that I didn't know before. I was just curious, what took you there to talk about this tribe and to explain that history as a part of San Dimas?
Well, that's a good question. I was told they were called something else.
Heberlino?
Tongva was one name. And when I met Gary Sickle, Dr. Gary Sickle, he had written a book about the whole tribe, and they were called the Quiche. Those other names were given to him by settlers here. The Gabrinos, that name was given to him by the Spanish. And the Quiche people, they weren't allowed to speak their own language. They had to learn to speak Spanish. And they really were treated horribly by the soldiers, the Spanish soldiers, and they kept them in almost like a concentration camp kind of situation by the San Gabriel mission, and they had to do all the labor over there for it. So it was quite a change because they were very peaceful, loving people, and they lived here for such a long time, and there's really no evidence of them
Yeah.
living here. It's interesting spelling. It's Kizh.
I have to say, I was saying it wrong up until you pronounced it correctly tonight.
But Toy Perina, she evidently was a pretty well-known leader. She was a very young woman, and so it was really an education for me
Thank
to
you.
learn all this. But thank you.
Do you have any time estimate on when this thing will actually be the tile? Or Scott, do you have something to?
Well, the man I spoke with at the tile company said that it takes a minimum of about 8 weeks to fabricate them. And he said they'd have no problem duplicating the colors I used for them. So doing them digitally, I was able to do them at a very high resolution at half size so they can blow them up to the correct size. Because we measured each of the openings on the bridge, and of course each one's a little bit different in size. So we're going to have to adjust each one a little bit. Oh, one thing I forgot to show you. Can I go back up on there? We have chosen spots for the murals to go, and I wanted to. I almost forgot about that. Can I get back up? Okay, let me go to. Okay, here's the bridge. I don't know if you can see those numbers on the blue area.
We also have them in front of us.
So on Bonita Avenue, if you're going from right to left, the very first mural on the left side there, that would be the mural of the existing town, how it looks today as you come into San Dimas, okay? On the right side, on the same side of the bridge, we'll have the Native American one, right there, okay? Then on the opposite side of the bridge, mural number 2, that's the train mural, and that's going to be near the train station. Okay, so it makes sense to put that there. And then the other mural on across the street there is going to be the citrus mural, number 3. It's going to go there, and I hope you guys approve of that.
Was there some kind of a thought process in your mind for that, other than you just explained it?
Well,
Because the train makes sense, the town makes sense.
It was really tough trying to figure it out because 2 of the murals are going to be seen a lot more than the other 2 because of the direction of the bridge. But I thought as you come into the city, the first one, number 4 on the left, as everyone's going to see that as they approach the city. So I thought it made sense to put the last mural, the one of the current city with the clock tower, put that one right there.
Thank you.
What do you think of that? And the Native American one, hopefully people will see that too. They're going to be lit up at night, evidently. They put wiring on the bridge so they can have these lit up at nighttime. So they should look really nice.
Super, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I had one quick question out of curiosity. I noticed that on figure 4 of the modern day San Dimas, Mount Baldy looks different than the other 3.
I'm glad you noticed that. I was
What
wondering.
was the thought process?
It grew.
Well, I wanted to, I mean, the other ones are a little more designed looking.
Yeah, so I was noticing.
And I decided this one, I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, and I wanted to paint the mountain the way it really looks. If you notice the other 3, they're all exactly the same
Yeah.
in the history of our city. And it just kind of went with the design I was doing. And I think it worked really well. I really love that one. It shows our pretty valley and everything. And then the last one, you know, it seems like it should be a little bit more realistic looking.
Okay.
Really?
And I think it works well on that
I
one.
agree.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions, but I just want to thank you for all your work. I think these will look fantastic. Personally, I would have probably taken a picture of the mayor's face and then put it over one of those Orange Grove workers, just as like a Where's Waldo type of thing, but I think it works just fine without him, too.
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, I got some
Real nice.
distinguished-looking men in there.
There's some good mustaches in there, so that's good.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Just real quick, Scott, do you have any estimated time on when these murals will actually be hung up and, you know, how long are we going to wait after he gets them back in 8 weeks or 10 weeks or?
Yes, I do. So we anticipate this taking about 9 weeks. And once we receive them, then we inventory them and we give them to the Gold Line. They could hang them up as early as October. And once we give it to them to hang up, then it's, we're sort of at their mercy as far as the schedule. But they're fully on board. They're excited also.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
We'll move on to oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the city council on any item on this agenda or not on this agenda. Public comment will not be taken during each individual agenda item except for public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. However, your concerns will be referred to staff or set for discussion at a later date. Each speaker will be limited to speaking once for up to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, is there
The first speaker is Sylvia Melendez with the San Dimas Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, everyone. This is a final reminder that we will be holding the State of the City and update on business on Thursday, and we wanted to invite the entire community out. Networking starts at 7:30, and the program starts at 8:30. We want to thank Mayor Badar for presenting the State of the City, and also Dominic Torres for presenting the update on business. The event will take place at the Senior Center, located at 201 East Bonita Avenue. And we will have light refreshments, and everybody in the community is invited and is free to attend. Thank you so much. For more information, you could contact the San Dimas Chamber at 909-592-3818 or at info@sandimaschamber.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Ruth Louvain, speaking on actually, that item is under other business. She wants to speak on the resolution? Yeah. Okay. Ruth? I thought I would speak under the resolution. Yes. Now's the time for that.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I want to thank you very much because I rise in support of this resolution that you wrote, which is, going to oppose the increase in rates to our residents. I did some extensive research on the annual report, and it was not easy for me to be able to get that. As it turns out, current unrestricted assets have decreased by $14 million, which is largely due to net revenue from imported water sales from the fiscal year 2022. By the way, as well, in 2023, there's been a decrease in standby change revenue from $10 million to $6 million. Their capital assets as well have a net depreciation of $7 million due to a write-off of $2.8 million, which have to partly due to the case that they do have a facility which is being currently looked at due to the fact that that particular facility has poor groundwater. So this is just to give you an idea of what is actually happening behind the scenes, or at least what I was able to read from the fiscal reports. Generally speaking, overall water sales have decreased. That's because the import water sales cost more. So what happens is the water company actually budgets for how much water they're going to import. And if they budget for more than what it is that they sell due to conservation messages, then they're left with holding the bag, so to speak. And we end up paying that. About 60% comes from residential sales. So I don't know about you, but when I can't afford the cost of something, I don't go calling my parents and getting them to pay for it. What I do is I cut costs, i.e. I cut the fat. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're asking the residents to pay for the cost of them unable to be able to budget properly at the water plant, i.e. Golden State Water Company, which provides us of our water. I find this to not be the appropriate way in which to manage their fiscal responsibilities. In other words, I find the 30% increase that we've experienced over the 4 years to be deplorable, but the next 17% increase that we're going to basically see, if I'm doing the calculation of the math appropriately, we cannot handle that as residents. You know, we've seen a lot of increases in the last few years, but electricity and water, those are necessities for us to be able to maintain our communities and our families. I'm very grateful that you understand that and that you understand us and that you have our needs. And I want to thank you for writing this resolution and making sure that basically the arm that stretches out from the departments, plural, of water and power and Golden State Water Company, make sure that they do what they're supposed to do so that we can do what we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those were all the speaker cards turned in, Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak to the council at this time, please come forward.
Bob Olander. Good evening, council, city manager, and staff. Once a year, we have something that comes up in our city, and I wanted to pay tribute to that. Tomorrow, we have a special event. We have the mayor's birthday. So, from all of his friends, family, and those that want to honor our mayor, happy birthday, Mayor, tomorrow on the 26th.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have something to say? Would like to speak to the council, please? Seeing none, let's hurry. Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the city council requests separate discussion.
Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 12, please.
Number 12?
Yep.
I do have a comment on consent 9. I don't feel the need to pull it, but I would like to speak to it if that is okay with the council.
I have no problem.
Okay. Want me to go first? Okay. So consent number 9 is to approve a 1-year contract extension with Urban Graffiti for graffiti abatement and shopping cart retrieval services for an amount not to exceed $103,000. I'd like to begin by saying that I think that they are doing a wonderful job at attending to the graffiti and covering it. What I want to add is that I know the community is calling for some proactive measures to maybe make some areas in San Dimas that get hit quite often less desirable. I just want the community to know that there is internal discussions going on in how we can go ahead and proactively stop some of the spots in the city that just get graffiti more often than others. So I have no problem with going ahead and extending the contract. Just wanted to say there are other pieces to it that we are working on.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar for items 1 through 16, with the exception of item 12.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. Then we'll come back to item number 12.
All right. Hi. So rather than rehash the staff report, unless any other member of council wants the presentation, I'm good for going a presentation. Okay. That's fine. So I was just curious, the policy looks good. I know there were amendments made to that following the last council meeting discussing that. I'm curious on what the total flight time is of the drones that we have.
Okay, it's just so I understand, Councilman Viana, the total flight time of the existing drone?
No, well, any drone that's going to be subject to this policy. So, for example, like my drone's 15 minutes of flight time. What's the flight time on a battery that these things are going to get that we have?
You know what, I would have to get back with you on that.
I have a little experience working around these same exact drones.
Yeah.
If you'd like to get some insight to that. It's
Yeah.
about 25 minutes.
Okay, cool. So, so I guess my question then is, as it relates to the segment regarding noticing residents or those who would be in the flight path of said drone, and I'm trying to find this in the packet here. The staff arrived at feeling the necessity or it would require notification when I think the policy says the drone is going to hover over a residence for 5 minutes. How did we arrive at 5 minutes as being the threshold for that?
We wanted to give some flexibility for if they're flying from point A to point B, because we have the ability not to video for that. So we wanted to set up some sort of a limit to what was a reasonable amount of time to be over a property. That was the idea behind it.
Okay. So, and I'm trying to find this. Do you have a page number by chance?
153.
153. Okay, let me find it here. Scrolling.
165?
165, okay. All right, here we are. Okay, so so I guess my issue with this is that just having experience flying drones, that realistically 2 minutes to me would seem excessive,
Okay.
Hovering over a property. I think you can study something and really determine what it is in probably 1 minute, to be frank with you. So I don't know where council's at on it. I mean, my personal preference, I'm good with everything else in the policy. My only concern is as it relates to privacy of residents, that hovering over somebody's residence for 5 minutes to me is a significant amount of time to capture imagery and then record absent notification. And I know the policy says, I understand not notifying if we're flying to and from, so I get that. I don't have any concerns about that. I do, though, have concerns regarding this provision as it relates to that. So I would be interested if, depending on where council's at, from my perspective, I mean, to me, 2 minutes is more than sufficient in terms of a threshold to notify a resident. I personally would prefer 1 minute, to be honest with you, because I think if you've flown a drone, you can get that thing, fly it over the site, in literally 1 minute, you know exactly what you intend to record, and then it's just a matter of zooming in and determining, what's the closer shot that you're wishing to get and study. So to me, from my experience, I think that if we know what it is we're flying to, we know the residence we're flying to, the minute you're going to hit that altitude to get to that residence, I think you will have determined, yes, that's the address I'm looking to do whatever official business we have. I think that, to me, 1 minute, if you're going to be there longer, is sufficient enough to notify a resident, in my opinion. but I don't know where you guys are at on that.
The only question I would have is there any use case that would require that 5 minutes? I can't think of one, but if there is one, then that should be brought up.
If I may, I think the discussion last time was centered around the privacy. And so if we're going to be flying over somebody's private property, they should be noticed. And so when we looked at that, we can shut off the recording and any of the collection of information while we're getting to a location. And it's not practical to just follow public right-of-ways at 90-degree angles to get there.
Yeah.
I noticed that 5 minutes is a lot. I think setting a 2 or a 1 minute also, I think, can have some secondary effects. I think what we're really trying to target here is if we're going to hover over a specific property for any material amount of time or collect information from said property, we should be attempting notifications of those. So I'd rather just remove the time and make reference to for any material period of time, because we don't know. It may be even 30 seconds over a property that I'm recording somebody's backyard. Yeah, I think you should be noticing them that we're going to be flying over your backyard. The point is to protect against just doing something that the resident won't know it's happening.
Right, yeah, and that was, I think, the intent. So I agree with that language. If that's something that you would propose as an amendment, if council's good with that, then I'm sorry.
I would remove for more than 5 minutes in recording. So in the interpretation of notifications required when the drone is hovering over a specific property, I don't see a lot of cases where we would just hover over some random property. We should know where we're going and target that and get there. And if we're hovering and it's not material, not recording, and it's de minimis, yeah, maybe not. But if we're going over to a property, I'm going to be hanging out there. The point is, I don't want to go to my backyard and see a drone and go, what is this?
Right.
Over my property, I should know about that.
Right, and my concern is once you get over that property, and if you're lowering your altitude, right away I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? Is it red dawn? Do we have a problem? And, and I know there's people that really do have significant privacy concerns, and I just would rather avert any sort of mishap from some residents that may have significant concerns of privacy. It's probably more prudent just to notice them for whatever the duration is, so.
Okay.
So with that, if that language change is acceptable to council, then I would move approval.
I have a question.
Withdrawn.
I know that we're training folks to be able to, maneuver these drones and stuff like that, but things happen, and say a drone goes down in someone's backyard. What is the recovery? How do we recover this? Especially if that person's not home, now we're going to go on to private property to recover our drone. What's the process there? And it's then the same thing. You knock on the door, and the guy says, "Hey, that's your problem. Now it's my problem, and it's going to stay here."
The same laws.
How do we get past all of that?
The same laws apply. We can't just make entry to somebody's property without their permission. So if we're heading to a subject property, for example, we have a report of a hillside slide and we're notifying that individual, hey, we need to be on your property, and then the drone goes down, we've already notified them. We would contact them to make entry into the property. At that point, we've already lost the drone and we know where it is. And so there's no hurry, there's not sensitive, confidential national security information on that drone, so it's not a necessity to make immediate entry, except if that drone falls, may have started a fire, or in some other way creates an imminent hazard, in which case we would obviously call 911 and get their assistance to do so.
All right, we're just not going to go on to somebody's personal property and
We shouldn't be.
sure. All right, thank you.
Sorry. I noticed that the verbiage around notification is quite general, and I do understand that we can't put ourselves into a corner on specifics, but I do want to make sure that notification is to our residents is respectful, intentful, that it's reasonable notification, and that it's not something quietly said that we move past. And we did talk about this a little bit, but can you just express to the community what kind of the plan is to make sure that they're notified reasonably?
Right, so the intent is, if we flying over a property, is to get permission. There's very rarely that we wouldn't have permission. For instance, most of the time, the drone's going to be used for inspection, or it's going to be used for looking at a street in the right-of-way. So the intent is we would knock on the door, or we would mail a letter out if we're going to fly a drone, We typically have several days' notice, so we would give them at least a 48-hour notice is typical what we would provide, and make contact with the individual.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add to that, typically when the council passes policy, it's more general. In some cases, very specific, but generally it's general, and then we have to implement the policy. The intent behind notification is to have a meaningful permission to get on the property. I mean, there may be the case of absolute imminent threat to life and property, and you just can't, and you end up going there and knocking on the door and there's nobody there, but I have to make a balanced choice. And that imminent threat of the hillside behind that property necessitates me setting up the drone over the property, and we would do that and leave notification for that individual. But if we have a planned mission to a specific location for a purpose that isn't a time-sensitive one, then we should get adequate notice and get a hold of that person instead of leaving a note, knocking on the door, and like, yep, we did our job, but they may or not know that you were going to be there, and they're on vacation, and something's happening. So unless there's an exigency, we should be trying to reach them before we get over their property.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just, last comment on this from me is that, it's not often we have a discussion on or a policy that really gets into the issues of search and seizure and government intrusion into people's property. And I think that that's really the balance here with this, understanding there is a legitimate purpose for us to have this technology and leverage it, and, some very great benefits to the city as a government arm. But on the other side, as a representative of the residents here, there's also that balance, right, between making sure that the policy it protects them and is consistent with what they hope to see as best practices or good practice in the community. And we just happen to have a lot of people passionate about their privacy. So, cool. With that, thank you, staff, for incorporating council's comments regarding this matter. I am a little disappointed that Brad's son isn't here to present the topic. But nevertheless, I will move approval of item number 12 with the amendments in the language as outlined by the city manager.
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. That will be the end of the consent calendar. We'll move on to other business. Introduce ordinance 1306, amending chapter 14.11, stormwater management and discharge. Staff?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Lauren Marshall, Senior Management Analyst for Public Works. Tonight, staff is introducing for your approval Ordinance 1306, amending Chapter 14.11 and 14.13 of the San Dimas Municipal Code to align and comply with the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board's current Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4 permit. So the city of San Dimas has two drainage systems, one the sewers and two the storm drains. Sewers convey the waste from homes and businesses via bathrooms and sinks and are treated at wastewater treatment plants. The storm drain system was designed to prevent flooding by carrying excess rainwater away from the streets out to the San Gabriel River and finally out to the ocean. Runoff that enters the stormwater system is generally not treated to remove contaminants. During storms in urban areas, rainwater runoff carries pollutants generated from commercial businesses, residential areas, streets, sidewalks directly to the ocean, creating stormwater pollution. Materials such as sediment, paint, plaster, yard waste, vehicle brake dust, oil dripping from engines, animal waste, and trash contain chemicals, nutrients, and bacteria that are harmful to aquatic life and humans. The goal of the MS4 permit is to prevent these harmful contaminants from entering the stormwater drain system and ultimately our drinking water and the ocean. The stormwater program under the NPDES was established to regulate and manage the discharge of pollutants into water bodies. This program has been in place since the Clean Water Act was enacted in 1972. It was further expanded in 1987 to include municipalities. San Dimas became a co-permittee under the Los Angeles County's MS4 permit in 1992, and this permit is updated approximately every 5 years to incorporate new regulatory requirements. So in response to the 2002 permit requirements, many cities decided to work together as a region as a cost-effective way to meet these new requirements, which were numerous. The City Council approved an MOU in 2013 to develop a watershed management plan and coordinated integrated monitoring plan, known as the WIMP and the SIMP, for the cities of San Dimas, Claremont, Laverne, and Pomona, collectively known as the East San Gabriel Valley Watershed Management Group. In 2015, City Council also approved a cooperative agreement between these cities to administer and share the costs for stormwater monitoring efforts within the four-city watershed area. And these plans created a guideline for cities to comply with the permit. The most recent MS4 permit became effective in 2021. For compliance and alignment purposes, staff is updating chapters 14.11 and 14.13 of the San Dimas Municipal Code. Staff is only recommending updates to these code chapters that meet the minimum requirements of the permit, so adhering to the requirements is not burdensome for the community to follow. Updating these chapters of the municipal code by Ordinance 1306 will allow staff to continue to keep the city in compliance with the MS4 permit while offering code text that is clearer in terms of what is expected for compliance versus, say, the city directing someone to the water board to look up these requirements for themselves. As the introduction of each new permit has shown, requirements are ever increasing as thresholds allowed for pollutants become stricter and stricter. This impacts not only the city, but the community as a whole. Therefore, the community must adhere to the MS4 permit requirements and ensure no pollutants enter local waterways. The city provides educational material to residents and any contractors that may work in the city to assist in avoiding these violations. But while the city staff work to educate the community, the MS4 permit and the City of San Dimas Municipal Code allow for citations to be issued for those that fail to comply. Should the city fail to enforce the stormwater permit standards, the city can be found in violation and subject to some significant fines. Another section of 14.11 that is proposed to be updated relates to the regional board requirement that cities implement an industrial commercial facilities program to ensure businesses are in compliance with MS4 permit requirements. The program has been in place since before the 2012 permit was enacted, and with the current 2021 MS4 permit, San Dimas, along with all the other cities, are required to keep an inventory of their businesses, in our case about 200 businesses citywide, to provide education, assistance, and inspections for each of these businesses every 2 years during the life of the permit, and ensure compliance with municipal policies, procedures, and ordinances at as these facilities may be critical sources of pollutants to stormwater. The code as it's written now complies with the new MS4 permit. However, it is written now to be, it's less clear for a layperson to understand and thereby comply with as it was originally written. This code update recommends more specific language for residents and businesses alike to have the ability to look up the code and see a clearly defined set of regulations to follow. Development projects in the city must also adhere to the MS4 permit. All construction sites must implement best management practices to ensure no pollutants leave the site and enter local waterways. Additionally, low-impact development requirements dictate that approved low-impact development plans, or LIDs, must be reviewed, approved, and enforced by the city to ensure only clean, pollutant-free water leaves the site once the project is completed. These are known as permanent BMPs. This requires many staff hours for review, approval, and enforcement of the LID plans. As a result, total development costs may be increased anywhere from 1% to 5% in order to comply with the MS4 permit. The actual amount of increase would be dependent on the size of the development. Say for a small project like a single-family home, we may only require sandbags for that property. It's a smaller project. The recommended edits to 14.13 low-impact development outline these requirements using language consistent with the MS4 permit that is more straightforward to follow. Compliance with the MS4 permit has significant financial impacts for the city. Despite partial funding from Measure W, also known as the Safe Clean Water Program funds, they provide about $600,000 annually to the city, but the city still faces substantial costs. Direct costs include things like maintenance, public education, and compliance monitoring, while indirect costs involve staff time and administrative efforts such as the mandated annual reporting to the Water Board. In total, the city spends over $500,000 just in direct costs annually between the Safe Clean Water Funding Program and the General Fund. However, the cost to implement 100% of the revised 2024 Watershed Management Plan is cost prohibitive, especially with the rigidity of the Safe Clean Water funding rules regarding allowed expenditures. Thus, the city is looking at alternatives to compliance via infiltration projects and focusing on pollutant load reduction activities. The implementation of these updated stormwater requirements involves substantial financial investments. The costs encompass not only the immediate infrastructure improvements, but also the ongoing maintenance and compliance efforts required to meet these standards. Recently, the City Council directed staff to send a letter to the Water Board expressing concerns regarding the exorbitant costs associated with complying with the most recent updates to the stormwater permit, and asked that the board consider increasing funding support for cities through grant programs. This is only one example of advocacy efforts on behalf of the city since the implementation of the 2012 permit. The City Council has expressed concerns over stormwater implementation and the millions of dollars required for compliance. The city has also enlisted organizations such as the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments and the League of California Cities to further convey concerns related to compliance costs and its effect on the city's budget, as well as financial impacts to the city. And with that, staff recommends that the City Council introduce Ordinance 1306 by title, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, California, amending San Dimas Municipal Code Chapter 14.11 and 14.13 of Title 14 Water and Sewers, updating the stormwater management and discharge and low-impact development (LID) requirements for new development and redevelopment projects, and incorporating the Regional Phase 1 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System (MS4) permit requirements associated with discharge and connection to the storm drain system and control of stormwater and non-stormwater runoff. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
So I'm just going to say thank you. I know we had a study session regarding this, and it's a pretty comprehensive topic. I think you did a great job highlighting everything that I think people were interested in regarding this subject, and it is pretty comprehensive. So, and I like the graphic at the end. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. Well done. And Councilmember Weber and I were scuba diving on Sunday, and appreciate us having clean oceans. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Thank you. Lauren?
I'll move approval of the recommendation as outlined by staff to introduce and read by title ordinance 1306.
Okay, we need to have a reading of the ordinance title.
Ordinance 1306, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Dimas, California, amending San Dimas Municipal Code Chapter 14.11 and 14.13 of Title 14, Water and Sewers, updating the stormwater management and discharge and low-impact development requirements for new development and redevelopment projects, and incorporating the Regional Phase 1 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, permit requirements associated with discharge and connection to the storm drain system and control of stormwater and non-stormwater runoff.
Thank you. We have a first by Councilman Viana and second by Councilman Nakano. Any further questions?
Sorry, Deborah, I missed, what was three? I'm just kidding with you. I move we waive further reading and introduce ordinance 1306.
Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Lauren. Okay, we'll move on to second hearing, discussion and consideration of possible approval of resolution 2024-40 opposing the rate increase proposed by Golden State Water in its general rate case. Chris Constantine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put this on the agenda because this is an item that tends to get a lot of attention from the public. There have been a lot of comments out there in social media. I have received questions about the rate increases. And I think it's a good opportunity for the council to decide whether they want to take a position. And due to the timing, the deadline to provide public comment, which is the hearing period, is tomorrow. And so if the council decides to take a position of opposition, then I will transmit this resolution right after your approval electronically to the CPUC for that hearing. It also offers us the opportunity to bring Golden State Water forward to be able to communicate what improvements and what changes are occurring as part of a rate case. A rate case is something that utilities put forth for a 3-year rate increase. They're usually very complex. If you're looking at the rate case and all the attachments, it's hundreds of pages from Golden State Water. There's also a public advocate that does an analysis and files appeals on behalf of residents and taxpayers. And there's some back and forth that goes through the deliberative process leading up to what you will have now an opportunity to provide a formal comment. In the most recent rate case, there's a proposal in our region, Region 3, which includes San Dimas and a number of other cities, that over the course of 3 years would be an increase of approximately 35.6% of rates, with most of that being front-loaded in 2025 to the tune of just over 25%. The changes and increases in the dollar amounts that a resident would expect to pay, we provided an example here, but it's really dependent on the size of the meter and the amount of water that that individual business or resident would be using. So we can't really make an exact, precise estimate for a specific residence until they incur that water usage and based on their piping. There are 5 different categories of why the costs are going up and being proposed by Golden State Water, but I think it's best to ask Mr. Benjamin Lewis, who has graciously come forth to do an actual presentation so that it's clear about what is in this rate case and what does it mean for the city of San Dimas. So with that, I'd like to ask Ben to come forth. Oh, there you are.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for coming tonight.
No, thank you, Mayor, and thanks, City Manager. I have an excellent kind of recap of the process. So in your packet, I provided basically this presentation I'm going to give you. One thing I do need to change under the local water investments, and that's going to be kind of the main topic. It was somewhat truncated. When I copied it, I didn't put in the full list, so I'll place that there, and it has the full list of those projects. Let me see that. So as kind of was stated, Golden State Water Company, we're an investor-owned water utility operating within the state of California, and we're regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. And as part of the Public Utilities Commission process, we have a rate-making cycle. Every 3 years, we go in for a rate-making process associated with it. We present to them proposed projects associated with projects that we're looking at that actually add value in terms of our ability to continue to provide water service to the city of San Dimas and others within our service area. So again, and this is the one, again, is an 18-month process in terms of when we file it. So we file the application and typically in July, and then it's an 18-month process where we go out, there's the public participation hearings, which is going to be scheduled for tomorrow. And then also that's where the public's invited to get involved in the process. And then also during this process, we actually meet with, again, the Commission's Public Advocate's Office. They work for you guys in terms of what we do. Our job is to present projects and justifications that show the value that in terms of providing water service to you, such that it's uninterrupted and is safe and reliable. So that's our process, and that's our goal. This was the notification that was submitted, it was sent out in August. And one of the things that happened in this particular process that was a little bit awkward was when we filed the rate case, we had this notice that comes out. Typically, the PPHs are held roughly like 90 days after this notice. So in August, the notice goes out. Typically, the public participation hearings are held like in November, December. And the whole part of that concept is to give customers the ability to kind of review the data such that they can get input into the overall process. So again, it's a transparent process, and where customers get involved in the process through the PUC or through the cities or whatever avenue they would like to see. But this was sent to the customers in August, and as I said, typically the public participation hearing follows that within a short time period. In this case, the public participation hearing is in July. So you have this gap when people saw the notice and it wasn't top of mind and it came back in terms of that. That's just a process issue with the PUC associated with that. But that it does impact the customers in terms of their notification. So again, this is the general service area. So again, within our San Dimas service area, with City of San Dimas, we have 16,000 customers. Again, we're planning proposed projects. So again, these are proposed projects. Nothing has been approved. All these projects are proposed for 25, 26, and 27, associated with our ability to continue to provide you water service associated with that. Because again, our goal is that, water quality is our business. We don't want people to think twice about water when it comes out of their tap. And again, it's really important to us as water purveyors along the way in terms of our commitment, in terms of providing us safe and reliable water to you 24/7 in terms of our commitment to customer service. So this is the list of projects, and again, it's a little bit truncated. This one is, so these are the projects that we're proposing. So again, it's very upfront and forward with that. And again, when I was working on the list and I left off a number of projects. So again, the list you have has the full list, which totals about $30 million in investments that we're going to make in terms of San Dimas. These are proposed projects. Again, we've given testimony to the Public Utilities Commission in terms of supporting those projects. The top two, again, are the Wayhill tanks. These are the ones you see on San Dimas Road. Those have been there for well over 60, 70 years. Again, seismic retrofit, we need to do that. We need to, again, it's a concern that we have in terms of those tanks to replace them. We also talk about the highway plant nitrate treatment plant. There was a discussion about purchased water. One of the ways that we eliminate purchased water is that we maximize the local groundwater. And the groundwater is contaminated in terms of this area because, again, the agriculture. Basically the fertilizers lead to the nitrates get into the water, we have to treat for the nitrates. In our testimony, we believe that, we demonstrated that making that investment about $5.5 million to replace the existing nitrate treatment plant is more cost effective than buying the imported water from Metropolitan. And again, if you guys recall, and some of the council members may not have been on the council, but I was here a couple years ago when we had the state water project limitations in terms of getting water. Claremont was on basically restrictions. San Dimas was fine because we had local groundwater and we had water from the imported water associated with that. Our goal is that when it comes to the droughts is trying to maximize the local groundwater supply. The local groundwater supply is roughly 500 feet beneath our feet. The imported water is 500 miles to the north. So it's more cost effective for us to make those investments in local groundwater supplies. And again, when they are basically contaminated and we have to treat for those, to put the treatment solution in. So that's the $5 million you see there associated with it. Again, our SCADA system is how we manage the system in terms of all our pumps and booster stations. The AMR is the air main replacement program. So within San Dimas, we have a number of areas where we have cast iron, well, not so much cast iron anymore, but steel line pipe. It's an older city. So what's happened is some of the younger cities, and we'll say Cucamonga, Rancho Cucamonga, the technology and infrastructure is probably ductile iron pipe, C900 pipe. San Dimas, again, is typically after the war, 1940 pipe. So it's just the age of the infrastructure. That infrastructure ages 24/7 because with the infrastructure is none like us. I wish I could do what I could, 20 years ago. I wish I could do it now, but I can't. But the infrastructure, we are asking that infrastructure to perform the same way. It's pressurized 24/7, 7 days a week, and we're asking that infrastructure to perform. So over time, it will actually kind of decay over time, just like our bodies will decay over time as well. It just so happens that in this cycle, again, a 1944 investment, the age of that infrastructure, we just now hit that point where we need to replace that infrastructure. It's just, again, Cucamonga will have the same situation 40, 50 years from now based on when they install their infrastructure. So it's just really the age of the infrastructure associated with some of the pipeline projects along the way. What we're trying to avoid is having catastrophic leaks that really take out streets and do those things along the way. So we're trying to proactively replace those and program those into the projects that we're looking at. So, as I said, these are the projects that we have there, and these are proposed projects. We've given testimony to the PUC. So the PUC process is basically, we give direct testimony where we show them the project, we show them the value of the project, we show them everything that we believe is in the best interest of us providing service to the community of San Dimas as well as other customers. And the commission reviews that process. And again, and they actually write rebuttal testimony. And as part of that process, they're going back and forth now. And again, it is a transparent process. We encourage citizens to get involved. Again, this is the list of projects that we're going to do. If the commission comes back and says, hey, don't do the Way Hill plant tanks, we won't do it. And that will be reflected in the rates. But there's things we won't do. But there's certain things that we will argue for, and that's water quality. So the water quality piece, we're going to argue for that, and actually we'll argue for the tanks as well, because again, we need the tanks in terms of our water supply to continue to meet the demands of the customers. If we lose that water supply, it can be very impactful in terms of what we do, in terms of how the city is impacted as well. But that's the list of projects that we have there and that we're proposing associated with that. Again, and then for this, again, for the proposed rates as 25%, this is, again, the proposed or the possible increase associated with it. So for a customer that has a 5/8-inch meter, which is most residential customers, again, their bill would go up $20 a month, roughly, in terms of that investments that we're going to make. For the commercial customers with a 1-inch meter, that, again, their bill would go up roughly about $90 or so a month. So that's the change in terms of what we're looking for. This is at the rate that we're proposed, the 25, the 4, and the 4. So again, it depends what the commission comes back with, but this is basically if they were to give us everything that we asked for in terms of our proposed application. Again, tomorrow is the public participation hearing, which is a virtual public, we call it a PPH, it's a public participation hearing. There are ongoing hearings and negotiations. There is a website, so you can still give comments to the PUC regarding those items. Again, from our standpoint, we presented our testimony, we submitted our rate case, we've given all the information that we showed in terms of support of the projects. Our strategy is to, again, maximize the local groundwater. Our strategy is to continue to provide you safe and reliable water 24/7. Our strategy is to make sure we don't have catastrophic main breaks and those things based on aging infrastructure. That's our commitment. And then we'll switch over to the, I have one more presentation. It was in your package, just to kind of give you just a point of reference. So the Way Hill tanks, we call them the Way Hill tanks. These are the tanks that you see on top of the hill. So those are the ones that we're talking about replacing. And there's a little bit of a narrative in terms of why we need to replace those tanks. Right below it is, again, this is what you see is a water treatment plant and what it looks like. So it's a series of vessels that we have to purchase where the water actually goes through. And then depending on the treatment technology, there's different types of media in terms of how we would actually treat the constituent. Again, the SCADA system is basically allows us to monitor remotely. So we don't have to send people, we don't have to roll trucks out there. We can actually go out and we can move things around and shut things down remotely. And again, we think that helps us in terms of providing customer service. And then the last one is basically our main replacement program. As I mentioned, it's just the age of the infrastructure. Again, steel pipe as compared to ductile iron pipe, as compared to C900 pipe. It's just basically when this system was built out in the late 40s to late 50s, that was the technology that was used at that time. Since then, things have moved along the way, but that pipe is still stressed. It's still holding 50, 60 pounds of pressure, and we're starting to get leaks on those pipes. And again, from our standpoint, we're trying to address those before they become catastrophic leaks. So that's kind of what we have for you. Again, as I said, it is a process. We believe it is a very open process. These are proposed projects associated with it. Customers are encouraged to participate in the event. We feel strongly that we presented our case in support of continuing to provide you reliable customer service in terms of water quality, and definitely when it comes to customer service and our commitment to this community. So again, if you have any questions, I can answer those at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
First of all, thank you very much for being here. It's not an easy position that you're in, so I appreciate you very much. This is definitely an impressive list of proposed projects, keyword proposed. Assuming that the increased rate is improved, you've got $30 million worth of things here. All of these are not going to be done based upon the increased rate. Is that correct?
Actually, so yes. So that's what we're proposing over the 3-year period. So basically, that's why there's a 25, and I think it's 25, 4 and 4, or 5 and 5. But so basically, the goal, what we're doing, we're starting some of those projects now. So some of the pipeline projects, we're getting those in place. We're starting some of the projects that we believe that again, like the water treatment projects, we're working on those. And then so hopefully when the commission gives us the approval, in terms of those projects, we'll have everything set up to go. So the first year, we're going to really focus on getting like some of those projects there. So that's why there's a big investment in the first year. Then the second year, we're finishing off those projects as we go in terms of year 2 and year 3 of that rate-making cycle.
Okay, so I'm looking at this, and when I'm being sold on something, this looks great. Yes, I want to invest, I want to be a part of this, But is every city getting an equally impressive list of promises? And is the rate increase supporting every city?
Yes, so every city has a list of projects that we're making investments in, and that's in their rate filing. So Claremont has a list of projects that we're proposing for Claremont. We call our San Gabriel service area. They have their list of projects associated with it. So there is no quote-unquote subsidy. We make those investments in those communities because, again, for my service area is pretty much from the San Gabriel, it's Monterey Park, all the way over to Claremont. So I have a very diverse group, but from a construction standpoint, it's somewhat typical, again, in terms of how the cities and how they grew. I don't have a system like Cucamonga, something like that. So we're having the same challenges when it comes to water quality. So we're making investments in treatment. We're making investments in wells. In fact, in San Dimas, if you go by our office, you can see the 2 wells that we drilled right behind our office on Foothill. So it is the same type of commitment. We're doing the same thing in Claremont in terms of water quality, in terms of treatment. Again, it just so happens in my service area, there's a common timeline in terms of these investments associated with the water system.
Okay.
Does your, I guess to the question she asked, I mean, do these prices include, obviously I don't suspect you're going to knock these all out in 1 year. I'm assuming you have escalators factored into this for each project?
So what happens is that when we present the projects to the commission, there will be a kind of a reconciliation at the end of the year. Okay, what's going to happen? What's it going to look like? So that 25, that number may change based on what it looks like. And then there's also there's a requirement we have to perform. So again, if we tell them that we're going to make so many dollars of investments in next year, we have to perform. If we don't perform, then the commission will come back and say, well, you didn't perform, so that escalator that we talked about, that 4%, may not be there. So we do have to perform and that's part of, again, our commitment to you guys is that we will perform in terms of getting those projects in place. Because as I said, the value of the performance is the water quality that we give to you on a day-to-day basis and that reliability.
So in terms of, I guess, and I hear you on the commitment part, so like, if I was you guys and, when the cost escalated to where materials and time and labor and everything were escalating, I would assume you would scrap other projects to cover costs of projects to finish in priority?
Yeah, typically, no, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no.
Yeah, so typically it is it depends on how the commission looks at it. If it's a project-by-project basis, they will, and they could do that process, or they could say, okay, this is the maximum dollars that we're going to give to you. So therefore, you live within it. So yes, there are some challenges that we have had after, after COVID with the escalation in vehicle costs. They're almost doubled. So we had to change our strategy in terms of vehicles. We had to delay some of them because, again, we were only getting so much money. So once these rates are put in place, there's not, again, that's what they're telling us, and that's what we're going to spend, and that's going to be the investment we're going to make. And if something were to come up where it was unforeseen, or a situation we're working with the San Dimas Circle, no one foresaw that project. So what we're doing is we're going to delay a couple of the projects and move this project forward to make that investment in terms of the dollars that are available to us.
Thank you, sir.
I do have a couple of quick questions. What is Golden State Water's residential for like a 5/8 meter that's given in this example on page 322? What would the service connection charge be for that meter?
I don't have that, and I don't have my phone on that. I apologize, I don't have that in my list here. I can get that for you, but yeah, I don't have that, I apologize.
I guess what I'd be getting at is, it looks like, so that number that's given there, 7941 to 9930, wouldn't include like a connection fee.
No, that is inclusive of the meter charge. I will double check, but that should be inclusive of the meter charge because it's again, it says a 5-inch meter and it's using 9,724 gallons. So that's their monthly bill. That would be the monthly bill, including the meter charge.
Okay, what surcharges would it exclude up there?
So applicable surcharges, so there may be some surcharges associated with, we have some memo filings of things that were, some things that may be unforeseen that are really something that's really big that we have to address in terms of projects. So there may be some surcharges associated with purchase water, power issues associated with it. There could be some surcharges associated with PSP generators, things like that. So on our tariff, there are a list of those surcharges that are applicable. They're approved by the PUC, so you can take a look and you see those surcharges associated with it.
Okay.
And then also, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off, but also we do have cities there where we actually collect some fees from them as well. So, you know, we have utility fees, our franchise fees, some of those things. Those are typically built into it, but there may be a rare case where there's a surcharge for something that a city asks us to do, but that's very rare.
Would that be, so this is a very recent example. A neighbor of mine who's very near and dear to me decided he's moving. And he was looking around at a couple of different cities, and you mentioned Claremont, and one of the cities that he was steered away from, and I was privy to this conversation, it just happened the other day, which is why it's so topical. It was the water rates in Claremont that made him not buy in Claremont. He actually bought a house in Laverne because the water rates are so much more reasonable. So that's what I don't want to see happen in San Dimas, is people to be, averse to buying here because of water rate increases. So is that what the case is in Claremont? Because I'm unfamiliar with the reason why Claremont's water rates are so high. Is that because the city's tacking on it?
Well, Claremont's water rates are the same as in San Dimas. So the water rates are the same. So what happens is the customer usage in terms of their usage. Claremont customers and their parcels and how they use water outside the property is much different than San Dimas, which is much different than San Gabriel. So if I go to the San Gabriel customers, their water, same tariffs, same rates, they will use their bill will be smaller because they're using 13 units, but it's typically inside the home. San Dimas, customers are using maybe 15, 20 units, because again, you don't have the landscaping that you see in terms of like in Claremont. Claremont, we have customers that have acre lots, they use outside irrigation. So that's usually the culprit, is the outside irrigation. Because what happens is that we have 3 tiers. So the first tier is the first 20, I think it's the first 12 CCF. And then we have a second tier that goes to 32, and then after that, and then we have a third tier, anything over 64. I think I may have the notes here. But basically, so when you have the tiers, we put the 3 tiers in so the customers can actually decide where they want to be in terms of their bill. So again, if you have a small lot and you're conserving water, you can be in tier 1. And we have customers that live in tier 1 their entire life, and they're totally comfortable and happy with that. But we also have customers that have acre lots, and they want to use that water along the way. They will go into tier 3 and associated with it. So the rates are the same. It's just how the customer uses water on their property is what changes their water bill associated with that.
Okay, that's kind of scary to me, actually. And then one final thing, and it's not a question more than a comment, I'm sure you're probably very keenly aware of this, is that a lot of the feedback that I've gotten, at least in regards to the proposed increases, especially the first year increase, is that the public kind of understands that there's infrastructure upgrades that need to occur in these systems to continue providing water. And obviously, unquestionably, water is something that we need. But I think, by and large, what the public expects is for utilities and for the government, including us and the way we provide our services and fees, to keep up along the way, because a 20-something% increase in the first year is just a tough Band-Aid to rip off. And I know you're aware of that, and it's, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but that's just the main feedback that I have gotten, is just that it's a tough pill to swallow for year one, and in the future. Kind of the expectation from the residents that I've talked to is that we just stay on top of things, and a few percentage point increases year after year are a lot easier to swallow than one, singular year with all these projects that seemingly, because the appearance is, at least to the public, is that these weren't planned for, and if this infrastructure was aging, we should have been anticipating this happening years prior. So again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I'm sure you've heard that before, but just wanted to kind of voice what I've been hearing.
No, I appreciate the comment, and as I said, at the PPH, I think that's something that you could share with the commission in terms of their rate making, in terms of the 3-year process. I think that's their process that we're working within. So I think if you share that with them, we can see where it goes with that. But I understand the concern.
So my question is more related to what Councilman Weber said, and it seems to me that the only thing I think that is new is the nitrate treatment to make use of groundwater. All these other things seem to be replacement or maintenance. And so the question I have is more of an accounting question. It seems to me like you would have, when you built these things, a lifetime or a lifespan of the capital assets that you have, and you'd be able to account for that in terms of being able to budget for replacing them when the lifetime comes to an end. So I guess I'm just trying to understand why doesn't it seem like that was done in this case? It just feels like you would have more of a kind of a fairly steady rate, knowing when certain assets would give out and need to be replaced, rather than all of a sudden saying, oh, we have all these things we have to replace and upgrade. Let's increase the rates by 36%. It just seems a little odd, given the history and the knowledge that the agency has, or the Golden State Water Company has, that they wouldn't have accounted for this. Can you explain why that's not the case?
It's a 3-year rate making process. So every 3 years we go in. So as projects are basically denied or pushed back, they move to the next GRC. So, but again, the infrastructure still ages along the way associated with it. Also, what you have is that you also have changing regulations and conditions associated with the world we live in. So again, in terms of the groundwater issue, we just came out of a drought where that was really impactful in terms of what we needed to do. And it kind of coincided with our need to maximize the groundwater, which had the nitrate issue associated with it. So again, we need to do the replacement. Same thing holds true when it came to the Way-Hill tanks. We try to hold on to them and keep them in service as long as we can, but we're reaching a point now that we have to replace them. They're now becoming that liability associated with it. So we are looking at those. We do our master plans. We do meet with and in each rate case, we share our program associated with that. So every 3 years, we're proposing projects and showing the commission what we're proposing. Some of the projects, again, get delayed. Some of them get rejected. But the challenge that we have is that this infrastructure is just kind of getting to the point where the useful life is kind of decaying, and we have to make those replacements. And I understand the impact and your concern, but we are again planning those items out and programming them in the way that we believe is beneficial to everyone in terms of our ability to continue to provide water service. But I understand your concern.
So is it my understanding that because of the way the commission process is set up, you're not able to say we have to account for the 30-year lifespan of some of these assets and therefore budget that into the rate increases? You could only account for it when it's about to expire?
It's a used and useful type of model. So basically, when we put the asset in service, the customer is paying for that asset over the life of the asset.
Right.
When the asset fails, then we replace that asset and install a new one. So there's no like a premature retirement associated with it. We do try to program that in terms of the rate-making process, the impact to the customers. So we do try to slot those in. But like in the case of San Dimas, we have over 150 miles of pipe in the ground in San Dimas. So we have a lot of infrastructure that you don't see that's part of our ability to provide that water service to you, and it's aging at the same time. But again, we do take a look at that, and we do try to program that in. But sometimes you get to the point where it's that time that we need to address that in terms of whether it be the tanks, whether it be, the treatment of the groundwater. It just happens to coincide, unfortunately, at this particular point in time. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but again, it's one of those, we do take a look at it, we do plan it, we try to get it in place and try to slot those projects, but that's just the way in terms of the investments.
Can I chime in on one more thing? Assuming that this rate increase is approved, this rate increase is forever. So these things get built, it's done, but it's not like, hey guys, we fixed everything, your rate goes back down. I understand using rates to fund things, but it is concerning that there's never a stop. And it is extremely hard on residents to take this type of increase so quickly and just to never see an end to it.
No, I appreciate that, and having worked in the water industry for a number of years, the aging infrastructure is a big issue in America. And again, you guys see it on the pavement side, and we see it on over that side. And it's one of those situations where there will be some type of continuing investment. And then when you couple that with, upcoming regulations in terms of water quality standards, in terms of what's out there, PFAS, PFOA is a big thing that's out there now. So when you start getting to where you're looking at constituents and you're trying to address those constituents, you have to put in some type of treatment solution for those. And again, so there will be some type of, again, investment that we'll have to make along the way. Again, the goal is to see if we can actually plan it and move it that in a way that's beneficial and that not as impactful. But again, if right now, if the state was to come out with the MCL for chromium-6, we would have to respond in terms of complying with that. So that's kind of the challenge that we have on the water side, is that there will be regulations coming out in terms of what we need to do in terms of our water quality, and we will have to address those when they do occur. So.
Thank you.
We'll just emphasize that point again. That's kind of the point I'm making. So a while back, you acquired and you built these things. You asked for probably a rate increase at that time to cover the cost of installing those things and buying those things and everything else. Rates is the same. And it seems to me like that cost, since you're still charging customers the same amount, would cover that asset replacement, repair, and maintenance forever. I get that you have new regulations and then you would see maybe a rate increase as a result of that. But all these things here are being driven by things that you're replacing. And that's why I'm just having trouble understanding how you're depreciating different assets and how you're replacing them, instead of saying, well, we have all these things that we have to replace, and we're going to raise your rate and then we're going to keep it that. And then, 20 years, 30 years in the future, you'll have to replace these again. And then you'll say you'll ask for another one. And it's not making sense to me from a financial accounting point of view.
Yeah, and I'm not, and that's not, mine is more the engineering background, so I'm not the finance person associated with it. But I can say that the investment reflects the cost at the time then the investment is needed. So what we've been invested in 1950, that tank may have been $100,000. That tank now in 2024 is going to be $5 million. So that $100,000 is probably still there, but the tank today is now $5 million. So again, I understand your question, and I'm not quite, that's not something I can really answer, but I do know from an engineering standpoint, when the infrastructure that we built 20, 30 years ago is much more, what we built 24 years ago was way cheaper than what it is now. And again, the tank examples, 1950 tank may have been $100,000, and that may have been put into the rates, but now the tank is $5 million. So we have to make that adjustment associated with that. With those lives, when those assets that have that 60-year life, they will go through a couple of cost escalations just because, again, it's just the world we live in.
Is there not, and I don't know, that's why I'm asking, but is there not a reserve allocation from Golden State Water Company when it comes to this stuff?
Unlike cities, we do not have a reserve fund, that type of policy. So basically, it's used and useful. You pay for exactly what we put in service. So there's no reserve associated with it. If we were to over-collect, let's say we had a situation where we had a rate increase and we got in place and we didn't perform, there could be, again, a clawback, if you will, in terms of lowering the rates. Or let's say we agreed that we were going to do something and we thought the cost of water was going to be 10%, and the cost of water came in at roughly 8%, then there will be a surcharge that goes back associated with that. So it's the actual cost of water associated with it. So there's no reserves associated with it, what you may see with a city in terms of how they kind of move more money off to the side. But again, as I said, it's the total cost of service in terms of what we provide to you day in and day out.
If a catastrophic event happened, I mean, I have to imagine there's funds in the company to address like emergent matters, right?
Yeah, the funds would be the shareholders. So the shareholders would be basically the shareholders in the bank is where we would go to, and they would come out and then they would make those investments associated with it. So if there is a reserve, it would be the shareholders associated with it. In the PUC process, once we get the project, again, the rates approved and the rate case approved, that is the money. The shareholder is now out of it. There's no reserve. That has to be used and useful and put to use for you and the citizens of San Dimas. So that's that process associated with it. But yes, if there was a catastrophic event, then we would go to our shareholders and to the banks and say, we have a situation where we need to do something like that. We had a situation like that up in Barstow where there was a water quality issue at the military base, and we pulled the resources in to address that issue. If we had to do that here in the San Dimas, we would bring the resources in to continue to provide you water service.
If I may, and Ben, and I'm assuming there's some process either in a general rate case or emergency rate case adjustment that would make an adjustment for the investment by the equity investment from the investors, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so what would happen is that there would be an advice letter filing, and there was, we call it a memorandum account. So we would just take all those costs and we put it off to the side there. We would notify the commissioner that basically we have this situation that's dire and we need to take these steps. The commission would give us approval for that. We would set up, basically, it's called a memorandum account, it's just another subledger where we would charge those things. Then we would come back, and then the commission would review those basically what's in those accounts and determine if they were prudent expenditures in support of providing service to you.
Thank you.
And if I may ask another question to Ben. Ben, the CPUC establishes a rate of return for each utility, correct?
That is correct.
What is the purpose of that rate of return?
The rate of return is based on for the shareholders in terms of their commitment. It's no different than if you were to go to the bank and you had to borrow money. There is an interest rate associated with it. The banks have the interest rate. We have a rate of return that the shareholders get based on their investments in terms of the system.
And this applies, there's a percent of revenue, so 7.53 that I understand is the same this rate case as it was the last one, correct?
That is correct.
And then, so you're adjusting rates to ensure that the revenue gives that return to Golden State Water. So on the return on revenue for this rate case, the investors in Golden State Water are not incurring a higher percentage return on the investment on the back of taxpayers, correct?
That is yes, that is correct. Yeah, the investment reflects the cost of providing that service to them.
And so, and I'm not an expert in the rate-making process, but when you look at how this works, some of it works kind of like a bond measure for a school district where I ask here 20 projects we want to do at $100 million, and you're shifting around what you can do based on the $100 million. So costs come higher for a pool, so you spend more on a pool. That means you may not have a gym. So of the 20 projects, you end up with 15 projects. And then next year, I'm asking for funding for the other 5. And so when you look at part of what the public advocate identified here in some of the reports that, hey, you got money for projects that were already approved. But I think what Ben spoke to is if a project we estimated was $5 million and it turned out to be $10 million, you're going to spend $10 million of the total $30 million. The $30 million wasn't changing. That means you're doing fewer projects. So next time, I'm pitching those projects that I thought we would be doing with the $30 million, but didn't because certain projects were more expensive, and asking to do that next year. The public advocate's saying you already got approval for those, and Golden State Water is then showing the cost of projects number 1 were $5 million more than we anticipated, so we couldn't do project number 10. So now we're asking for project number 10 in my next rate case, and that goes back and forth. And then the other factors are if there's an approved rate of return for the investors of 7.53%, and water rate in the usage drops in the area, that means less revenues coming in, they're going to adjust how much the rate goes up to get back to that whatever approved rate of return is. So it's a really complex approach to all these elements that the average taxpayer doesn't know, doesn't understand, and I think it's important we get a presentation that kind of talks about that.
Okay. Bad day for this discussion. I opened up my water bill today, and I paid it. And then I started thinking of Mr. Lewis coming here tonight. So, but I know that the PUC has this list of projects that you want to do. So say they don't give you the rate increase that you asked for. Do they have an opportunity to set that rate to lower, and then you just eliminate whatever projects as you go? But it's a whole new process, but they just can lower the rate, and they say, instead of $30, so we're only going to give you $20. How likely is that to happen?
That is correct, and they can come back and they can make that determination. The commission can say, based on what we see and based what we heard, we believe that the rate increase should not be 25%. We believe that it should be 15%. And this is the dollar we're going to give to you, and you make those investments, but you're still on the hook to provide that level of customer service, do those things associated with it. We would go back, scramble, look at our list of projects, reprioritize those projects that we believe give you, again, when it comes to the safe and reliable water, we would do that in terms of that process. So they can do that. That is possible, that they can come back and say, we don't like that project, or we believe that project's not appropriate, or we think you can't get that done. In fact, that's the process that's happening right now with the commission and commission staff. So they're looking at the projects and they're making those determinations. And again, since we're regulated by the PUC, when the order comes out, the order basically, that will be what we will do. That's how we will perform, and that's how we will behave and provide service to you in terms of the city of San Dimas.
I think that I certainly understand, what you're looking for and how you're going about it, and I appreciate it. I think everybody in this city has seen Golden State Water trucks out there, working daily. And if you've seen a lot of fire hydrants that go up and waste a lot of water and all kinds of stuff like that. So people know that you're doing the job, but they also know what their incomes are. They know that when they open up that water bill or they open up that electric bill, it's a monthly thing that continues. I believe one of my partners here mentioned all of that. Well, I can tell you that I can't give you a number of people who've contacted me or talked to me and keep saying, what? This is just an ongoing process, and please oppose it. I have had nobody call me up and say, hey, I think this is a great deal. Now we're just seeing some of this stuff, and it makes, I don't think anybody can look at this list and say that you're not thinking about what's best for the city of San Dimas. But every individual family has to look what's best for them. They don't look at this big, broad picture because they turn on the spigot. Water comes out. When you don't turn on it, when you can't get this water out of the spigot, then all of a sudden it's a problem. It's just like I don't worry about crime until the crime happens next door. But we also represent the city and what's best for the city, but we also represent, or we majorly represent 35,000 people. And quite honestly, if I went out and I did an election right now and said I want to raise your rate, I got a feeling that we'd get a very low percentage of saying, yeah, that's a great deal, go ahead and do it. So, but I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time, and I also want to make note of any time we've asked you and any time we've needed to find out information, you've been sitting back there and you listen and you come right up and talk to us. I always want to thank Golden State Water. And just as a sideline, I want to thank Golden State Water for their the continued help with city events and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to say yes.
Again, Mayor, our commitment is here in terms of that. And as you know, we'll show up. We understand that anytime you have a rate change, any amount change is difficult associated with it. But again, in our business, it's water quality. And again, it's something that we take very seriously, our commitment to providing water quality and safe and reliable water to you. And again, our commitment is such that when you wake up in the morning, the last thing you're thinking about, I use the example, your clock is blinking, so you know the power went out. Most people get up, you turn on the water in the shower, and you start getting ready to go. That's what we want. We want to such that when you wake up in the morning, water is not on your mind. It does come with a cost associated with it, so I understand that, and I appreciate the comments from the council, and I understand the decision that you will make, good or bad. But again, from our standpoint, myself, Bob, who's back in who's our superintendent, our commitment stays true. We'll be here for San Dimas as we have been for at least the 15 years I've been in the system. So I do appreciate your time.
Thank you, man.
Mr. Mayor, before we vote, I'd like to request a recess for 10 minutes to consult with the city attorney regarding something related to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. We'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll come back to order. Do we have any other further questions for Mr. Lewis before he leaves?
No, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank council for the brief recess. I wanted to consult with our legal eagle as it occurred to me during the discussion. I at one point had funds invested in a utility mutual fund, but as we discussed it, number one, I don't have an investment in that anymore. Number two, I never explicitly invested in Golden State Water Company. So it's always better safe than sorry, and I always like to be prudent on those matters. So thank you both for your expertise and input on that.
Thank you.
Wow, I love the Levine Act insertion in there.
Want to be above board, you know.
Okay. Christian, anything further you need to say? Okay. Just comments from the council. Anyone interested in speaking up here?
Well, I will say, I'll echo the mayor's comments that I do think that Golden State Water Company has always and continues to be a great partner in this city and the community. From the first time I got elected, doing the barbecue pit out there and all that jazz, I remember having a really good time with staff, and they do a lot in this community. With that being said, as much as it pains me to say this, I cannot support at least the council taking a position in support of this. I think that, as the mayor's alluded to, I have had a number of folks contacting me very frustrated, and while they seem to understand some of the projects, to Councilmember Nakano's point, and maybe it's just an issue of education perhaps, but not planning for those projects, at least from the perspective of some members of the public in the context of like a reserve and so forth, seems to create a feeling that there maybe wasn't fiscal prudence. Now, I understand that there may be laws and ways of doing business that prohibit that from occurring, but to the common ratepayer, the lay person for which we're supposed to represent, that is a lot of the sentiment out there. So for that reason, I would support the resolution opposing the proposed rate increase, and I could also support taking no position, but I do think that the folks that have reached out to me very vehemently oppose the rate increase, and I'm pretty much in line with that.
Any further comments?
I'm definitely of the nearly exact same opinion. All of the feedback that I've gotten has been overwhelmingly opposed to such a stark rate increase at the beginning of the 3 years. And I just don't see any way that I could even take no action. I think the sentiment is such that the public has essentially paved the way for us to oppose this in any way that we can, just to show that this is not a rate increase that the public is willing to absorb all at one time.
Any further questions? Do I have a motion?
You guys. I'll move approval of Resolution 2024-40 opposing the proposed rate increases by Golden State Water Company.
I'll second that.
Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0.
I would like to say that vote is no reflection, though, on your comments and your presentation, because it was thorough, and thank you for answering all of our questions. I think that the questions were answered and the information's there. I just can't tell you how overwhelmingly passionate the community is regarding this particular topic during this time. But thank you for your presentation. I do hope to see you at the barbecue. So, all right.
All right. We'll move on to oral communications. Members of the audience, speakers are limited to 3 minutes, or as may be determined by the chair. Sir? Mr. Lindeman?
Hi, I'm Steve Lindeman. I wasn't prepared tonight to talk, but I came tonight to support Keith because I'm a picture framer and I support artwork. So that's why I'm here tonight. But good evening, and I just have a couple comments. This is exactly the problem with monopolies. The water company is like the post office. I mean, when they need money, they just raise the rates. I mean, I'm 76, but I most recently remember stamps being 48 cents a piece. Right now, they're 65 cents a piece. And it's just, businesses just can't afford these kind of increases. With waste management, I was paying $250 a month for my dumpster at my shop. And then all of a sudden they said, well, now you need 2 dumpsters because you need a recycling dumpster and you need your regular dumpster. So now I'm paying $350 a month. It's interesting. I know I'm just small potatoes compared to the water company, but when something breaks or needs replacement at my shop, I was told today that we need to buy a new circular saw because our saw gave out. Well, it's going to be $1,100, and I have to fund it and fix it, and I can't go to my customers and say, hey, you know what? I need to raise your rates on your picture framing because I need to buy a new saw. I'm sorry, it's part of my infrastructure, and I need to do this, So anyway, with the water company, I pay my water bill every month, and I have sprinklers in my shop. And I pay $40 a month to have the sprinklers in my shop. I've never used the sprinklers. I've never had a fire, but I have to pay $40 a month to have that water at the ready. I've been there since 2007. I don't know, I didn't figure out the math on this, but $40 times all of those years for never using that water, I mean, it's almost like you want to have a fire, so that you can use some of the water, but then my agent, I framed for, my insurance agent came in one day, and my wife was there. And my insurance agent said, boy, your husband, he really has a lot of nice collectibles here, signed memorabilia and stuff. And my wife said, my husband is a hoarder. And he said, no. He said, your husband is a collector. And she said, you know what I would like to do? I'd like to set this place on fire and collect it. I said, so I run in, and I said, listen, this is our insurance agent, stop talking about the fire. But anyway, I had a great time tonight, and I wish everybody well. You're all doing a great job, and thank you very much. And happy birthday, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Kathy?
Good evening. Last week, the Housing Department of San Dimas hosted a meet and greet at Charter Oak Mobile Home Estates. And I have to tell you, that went a long way for building a bridge with the residents in the park. A lot of the feedback that I've gotten this week when I'm walking my dog is how much they appreciated not only meeting Rachel, but the fact that she went around and literally talked to anybody that wanted to talk to her and listened to them. The biggest thing with senior citizens is we feel like we're never heard. And so I want to thank Rachel for coming. I want to thank Emmett and Chris for coming. And Chris, please tell Lily and the entire housing staff how much that event was appreciated, because it was. And then the other thing about this water thing, they said that notices are sent out to residents so that they can have input. But when you live in a sub-metered, we don't get those residents. So an increase like that would be a total shock to senior citizens. So I appreciate the fact that you guys voted against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll come back to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the annual awards event where the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs recognized the amazing bravery, heroism, and life-saving efforts of our county deputies. Two of our San Dimas station deputies, Deputy Peter Bamarito and Reserve Deputy Ikatani, were awarded the life-saving award for their heroic action in saving a person's life during a call-out. I attended it with two of our council members, Mayor Emmett Bedard and Mayor Pro Tem Brian Viena. It was the first time I've had the opportunity to attend that event. Pretty amazing to see what our Los Angeles Sheriff's Department does. And I think we need to take every opportunity to support and thank those who put their lives on the line and do the kind of amazing things that they do every day. Secondly, the Chamber CEO mentioned that this Thursday at 8:30, the mayor will be giving his State of the City address here at the Senior Center. The doors open at 7:30. We invite everybody in the community to come and attend and listen to the amazing words that I know our mayor will give, as he does every year, and to highlight some of the amazing services that we provide through the city. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. City Attorney?
I have no report, no report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the council, council members' reports on meetings attended at the expense of the local agency? Seeing none, Mr. Nakano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to wish you a happy birthday, and thank you for your leadership and always putting the city first. It does not go unnoticed, and we're grateful for all that you do.
Thank you.
I want to thank the community for reaching out to me and checking in on me. As you may have noticed, I'm in a sling, and that's because I shattered my wrist a few weeks ago and was in surgery at the last city council meeting, so that's why I was not in attendance. It's been a painful recovery, and I expect the recovery will be long, but I really appreciate everybody who has checked in on me, sent me food, made sure that I'm okay. It really does mean a lot, and I think it exemplifies the type of community that we live here in San Dimas. So along with that, I also noticed that as you probably have noticed, the temperature in San Dimas has risen, and I want to remind residents who may not have access to a place to go. You can go to the senior center during the day. It's a cooling center, and it's a great place to meet other people, be in a place that's cool, and protect your health. So for those residents who may have difficulty accessing a cool space, the senior center is open during normal business hours. I also want to acknowledge the many holidays that we've had over the month of June. We've had Father's Day. I know that there are two fathers here on the dais with me. I want to wish them a happy belated Father's Day, along with the fathers here in the audience. I want to wish those who celebrated a happy Juneteenth. And I also want to wish happy Pride to those who celebrate Pride. As you may have heard, the County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution unanimously to fly Pride flags over county buildings. I know that we've had some difficulty getting it up here in our city over county buildings, but I hope that will, with the few days left in June, we're able to do that. And I hope that it flies next June for the entire duration. The reason why that's important is because as a gay kid in San Dimas, I oftentimes looked for places or signs that I was accepted and welcome in the city of San Dimas. And seeing a flag like that, knowing that it is an inclusive and welcoming place, does make a big difference to those who may be bullied, who may be forgotten about, or maybe not feel like they're welcome here in San Dimas. So it is important, and I thank the captain for doing all he can to try to make that happen. So those are all my remarks. I also want to wish our council member, Vienna. He was selected for a very prestigious program. I don't want to reveal too many details about it because I don't know how much he wants to share, but he will be missed during the time he is gone. I understand that the resolution was passed while I was out, and I wish him well. I know he'll be representing the city well, and we look forward to hearing back from him when he returns. And with that, I conclude my remarks, and we'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Weber.
Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to sing you happy birthday because you made me do that once already, and I made a fool out of myself in front of everybody in the city, so I'm not going to do that again.
Rachel's going to get to do that.
Hopefully, it's just not me. That's all I care about. I think Councilmember Nakano said it right, and that's that your efforts here in the city are appreciated and don't go unnoticed, and we really do care about you and wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you.
The Other thing that I wanted to mention is kind of a friendly PSA. This morning, I got on the San Dimas Buzz because I got a notification of a post first thing in the morning, and I opened it up to a video of a car launching itself over the sidewalk and through somebody's trash carts that were out at the curb for collection today, and just absolutely destroying their trash cans. It didn't look like anything more than somebody was probably texting on their phone while they're driving through our neighborhoods. So please be aware that texting really is dangerous, and driving distracted can cause very serious accidents. And luckily, they were just trash carts and not kids walking to school or what have you, waiting at the bus stop. So I think we can take it as a lesson learned rather than a tragedy. And, trash carts can be replaced, but kids can't. So please do everything you can in your power to leave that phone plugged in, down on your center console in your cup holder, and don't look down at it while you're getting to work. Get there safe. But that is all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm not going to sing to you now. Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor. I was able to go to my first Cars and Coffee, was it like 2 weekends ago? And I want to say Parks and Rec did a great job. It was really a lovely event, wasn't as warm as it has been. So it was wonderful. I know very little about cars, but I enjoyed what I saw, and I enjoyed seeing the community out. I did go to the Charter Oak Mobile Home Meet and Greet. Thank you so much to staff for helping to put that on. Thank you so much to the residents for being there and being so warm and so welcoming. One of our community members today said they're small potatoes, and I don't believe that there are any small potatoes in San Dimas. I'm honored to be here and to listen and to advocate for the needs of our community. And 4th of July is coming up. Please celebrate responsibly, have a wonderful time, and that's it for me.
Ryan.
Thank you.
This is going to be a while.
I thought you'd never ask, Mayor. Thank you. One is, I also attended the ALADS dinner honoring members of the Sheriff's Department, as well as members of the community throughout the county who have done amazing things. Everything from the 7-Eleven company to the heroic actions of our deputies, including those assigned to San Dimas, and even those assigned to my assignment who were honored for a life-saving award. I think that's a great event. I highly encourage as many council members to attend as you can, and if you get the opportunity to in the next year or so, to check that out. It's a good event, and they do a really good job. Thank you, Mayor, for attending, and Chris as well. I know it means a lot to our personnel to know they have the support, as well as there were electeds from all over. The Supervisor Barger, as well as Sheriff Luna were there, but on top of that, council members from a lot of our contract cities throughout the county, so that was really awesome to see. It was mentioned the 4th of July is coming up next week, so I hope everyone pays attention. Remember, San Dimas, although is a very fun city to live in, is also a city where we are in a high fire danger zone. So please remember, fireworks are prohibited within city limits, and that also is not just about the fire risk, but also, for pets and for others who may suffer from some traumatic injuries that the explosions may not be welcome. So please be mindful of your neighbors. There are great opportunities in neighboring communities to go see some pretty well-coordinated and extravagant shows, and I highly encourage folks to go ahead and check that out. You can find firework-related information from the city on their social media, as well as the Sheriff's Department's been pushing out a lot of information, as well as the fire department. With all that being said, I wanted to thank council for the questions during the Golden State Water topic. I think there was a lot of thoughtful questions being asked among everybody. Not an easy topic to discuss, but one nevertheless that obviously impacts so many people in our community. And there's a lot of different feelings about that. And thank you for also the position we took. I think it resonates, as Councilmember Weber said, with so many. Just for those that were unaware or may not have tuned into the last meeting, I will be away. I'm leaving on July 5th, returning in mid-September to attend an academy that I was nominated and selected to attend in conjunction with my duties in law enforcement. So I will be back east in Quantico, Virginia, attending a pretty cool thing, and I will talk more about it when I return. I thank council for granting me that opportunity to do that and for the excusals for the meetings I will miss. If there is something that critical comes up and I can make it, I will make it as it allows. But with that being said, I have my email. If anybody needs to get in touch with me, feel free to email me or shoot me a text. And lastly, if I could please ask the city manager to turn on his microphone and to lead us in singing happy birthday to the mayor. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was
Happy
really
birthday,
good.
Mayor.
You know, it's nice being 40.
I
It's nice
thi-
being 48 years old.
I think we found somebody to sing happy birthday at the barbecue every year from now on.
No, you know, I got to tell you, are you done?
Yes, Mayor, that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Okay. I got to tell you, we are all in for a thrill. Because at the birthday barbecue, our very newest council person is going to sing happy birthday, who, let me make it clear, actually sings extremely well. I heard her several years ago at something.
Yeah.
At something at the high school. This young lady knows how to sing, and
what you did.
she's just got to figure out what the words to happy birthday is.
I'll start practicing.
But you're on notice that's it, and you're on notice that we're starting a lot of stuff that's gonna. Well, thank you all for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. I too attended the Sheriff's ALADS event. Very impressed from a guy coming whose uniform is blue. And these guys are really learning, and I think they're going to catch up someday, but I'm not sure when. They have those uniforms, and I respect them and everything, but they have to understand that they had to be taught from somebody. So, but they were very good, and my congratulations to both. I'm sorry, why would you wear a star when you could wear a shield? Okay, the reality is, our two deputies that were from San Dimas that received awards they were actually out of the city, out of the state, or no, they were in the state, up in Mammoth, when they came across something they had to take care of, and they should be very well acknowledged for the fact that they represented San Dimas wonderfully and saved someone's life. So thank them for us as a community, for going to another community and doing the good things that they did. So thank you very much. As was said, we have the State of the City address on Thursday morning. If I have a voice left, we will get through this, but we will get through it one way or the other, Mr. Constantine. So the reality comes down to, but what I wanted to say is, somebody mentioned 4th of July. We don't have a parade, as we all know, but we have a suburb of San Dimas. Laverne has a parade, and it's a very good parade. So if you have the opportunity to go there and see it, I think you will enjoy it. But just remember, most of the people over there want to be residents of San Dimas. So make it clear that you're there to see them. Okay, thank you. Anything else anybody wants to say? Can I get a motion to close? Move where?
So moved.
Have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Oh, we'll see 4 of us in a couple of weeks. Ryan, have a very safe trip.